Forget everything you think you know about tanking in the NBA. The smart strategy that promises championships through lottery picks, it's all a lie and it's destroying franchises. Every year, we see teams intentionally lose and tell fans to trust the process. But what if this entire philosophy is flawed? What if the very act of trying to lose actually guarantees you keep losing? In this video, we're going to be exposing the hidden cost of tanking that nobody talks about. The same costs that trap teams in endless cycles of failure, and soon you'll see why chasing the #1 pick is often the worst decision a franchise can make, and how it ruined everything. The biggest secret about tanking isn't which lottery pick you land, it's how many fans and future Hall of Famers you push away in the process. When a team intentionally tanks, the message is sent to everyone. For fans who invest their time, money, and emotions, this feels like a betrayal. They show up or pay for their league pass, hoping to see competitive basketball, only to watch a parade of G League players in a clear attempt to lose. Think about it. We've seen teams like the Philadelphia 76ers during parts of the process see significant drops in attendance despite the hype around future picks. The honest fan experience during those years was often brutal. What fan wants to pay top dollar to watch that every night? It's not just ticket sales. Free agents, especially the elite ones, want to win now. They have a limited window to compete for a championship. Why would a top-tier player in their prime choose to sign with a team that has spent years actively avoiding winning? They're looking for a stable winning culture and a place where the expectation is to contend, not to bottom out for another lottery pick. Look at how many struggling teams with high draft picks still can attract big names in free agency. It's a direct consequence of a culture that has embraced losing. We see teams that have been perennial tankers struggle to land marquee talent year after year, forcing them to overpay for role players or settle for less. So yeah, of course, a lottery pick sounds great, but the real cost of tanking is losing your fans and making top free agents run the other way. You might gain a lottery ball, but you lose the very foundation that attracts and sustains winning talent. So while you're chasing that top pick, you're actually destroying the foundation winning teams are built on. Beyond the empty seats and the whiffs in free agency, tanking unleashes a silent killer within your own locker room. A losing culture that's nearly impossible to shake. The common expectation is that players are pros and that they'll play hard regardless of the record, right? And young guys will still develop their game no matter how many losses pile up. But that's a dangerous fantasy. Think about a team that's been through multiple tanking seasons. What happens to the veterans who are there? What about the young players? Young players on tanking teams often miss out on the pressure cooker moments that build champions. Think Bradley. So now you throw him into high-stakes games where every single mistake is magnified and his stat padding habits really show? He looked lost because the how to win playbook is completely different from the how to get my numbers playbook that he mastered. This also puts coaches in an impossible spot. They're told to develop talent, but often with the unspoken directive to not win too much. This leads to a revolving door of coaches that further destabilizes the team and prevents any real long-term development. So while the front office might be cheering for lottery odds, the on-court reality is a team learning to lose. You can draft all the talent in the world, but if they step into a locker room where losing is normalized and accountability is low, you're setting them up to fail. So while you're focused on getting high draft picks, tanking is quietly poisoning the very championship DNA your team needs. And that's just one piece of the puzzle that makes tanking a losing game. Everyone dreams of landing the next LeBron or Tim Duncan by tanking, but here's the brutal truth. The NBA draft is a lottery, and most of those top picks are anything but guaranteed. The entire premise of tanking rests on this one simple idea. If you're bad enough, you'll get a top-tier draft pick. And if you get a top pick, you're practically guaranteed a generational talent who will instantly transform your franchise. It's the ultimate carrot dangling in front of desperate fan bases. It sounds like a cheat code to get the next superstar without having to earn it through savvy trades or free agency, but let's be real about the odds. Even the absolute worst team in the league only has a 14% chance at the #1 overall pick. That's like hitting a half-court game winner. Possible, sure, but highly unlikely. Just look at the 2025 draft. The Mavs, who weren't even close to the league's worst team, stunned everyone by winning the #1 overall pick with incredibly long odds. They jumped all the way from the 11th spot, giving them the gift of a lifetime in Cooper Flagg. This isn't rigged, it's how the lottery system is designed. More often than not, that top pick goes to a team that wasn't dead last, proving that tanking guarantees you absolutely nothing. And even if you do land the top spot, history is littered with players who were supposed to be the next big thing but just weren't. Kwame Brown and Anthony Bennett were supposed to turn franchises around, but instead became nobodies. You also get players who are good, but not franchise-altering players like a prime Wiggins. The reality is, hitting on that true franchise-altering superstar is incredibly rare, even with a top pick. For every LeBron, there are 10 others who just don't even come close to that level. What about the hidden financial black hole tanking creates? Turns out purposely losing isn't just bad basketball, it is a massive money pit that traps teams for years. The common perception is that tanking is a necessary evil, a temporary financial hit for a future payoff. Owners might even tell themselves it's a way to save money by having a cheaper roster for a few years. But the reality is far more complex and damaging. Even if intentional, it directly impacts a franchise's revenue streams in ways that can be extremely difficult to recover from. It's a financial gamble that rarely pays off. The NBA has a salary floor, meaning teams must spend at least 90% of the salary cap each year. If a tanking team strips down its roster to acquire draft picks and save money, they often find themselves below this mandatory spending threshold. What happens then? They're forced to overpay for mediocre players or take on bad contracts from other teams just to meet the minimum. Think about teams signing players to bloated one-year deals or taking on contracts that don't match their future timeline simply to satisfy the league's rules. This ties up cap space that could be used later for actual impact players, or it burdens them with unwanted talent they then have to try to move. It's money spent, but without any real competitive benefit. So the expectation that tanking saves money or is a financially sound long-term plan is a myth, when in reality it drains revenue, discourages fan investment, and forces teams into financially unwise decisions just to meet league requirements. You're often setting fire to cash and handcuffing your future cap space, turning the supposed saving into a self-inflicted financial wound. This makes the path out of the tanking hole even longer and more complicated. If tanking is a broken promise that damages franchises, then how do you build a championship contender without throwing away seasons? The answer isn't a secret formula. It's smart management, player development, and a ruthless commitment to winning. There's a hidden cost to tanking that nobody talks about. It destroys your leverage in the trade market. The idea is simple. Showcase your young talent, let them put up big stats, and flip them for star-level assets later. But in reality, tanking seasons often do the opposite. They deflate a player's value right when you need it most, and here's why. On tanking teams, young players are asked to do everything. They're usually playing out of position, taking bad shots, and operating without structure. Sure, the raw numbers might look impressive, but other GMs aren't just looking at the box score, they're watching the film. And what do they see? Lazy defensive rotations, poor decision-making, inflated usage that doesn't translate to a real role on a winning team. So when it's time to make a trade, the phone calls get cold. That potential-filled guard averaging 19 a night suddenly isn't worth a protected first. Teams don't want players who've been built in chaos, they want winners. They want players who've learned to operate under pressure, who've built good habits in meaningful games. Take a guy like Peyton Pritchard. He's not the best player in the world, but he has played next to vets, learned within a structured offense, and developed in games that mattered. When Boston dangled Pritchard in trade talks, teams lined up. Why? Because winning context builds trust. Now compare that to players on tanking teams who've been putting up empty stats for 3 years. Nobody's offering real value for that. Tanking doesn't just delay success, it destroys the trade value of your most promising players. You're not showcasing assets, you're exposing them, and once the league sees those flaws, it's almost impossible to regain the upper hand. For too long, it's felt like the only path for a struggling team is to hit rock bottom. This expectation suggests there's no other way to acquire the talent needed to compete at the highest level, especially for small markets or teams not historically loaded with free agent appeal. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Look around the league at some of the most consistent winners. They didn't just achieve success by intentionally losing for years. Take the Heat, for example. They are the absolute masters of asset management and player development. They find undervalued players like a Duncan Robinson or Max Strus going undrafted, develop them, make smart trades without tearing down the entire roster, and maintain a winning culture. They build through finding talent where others aren't looking, developing it, and integrating it into a winning system. They literally show up every season ready to compete. Or consider the Nuggets. Their path to a championship wasn't through years of losing for a top pick. They drafted Nikola Jokic in the second round, then steadily built around him with trades, solid drafting in later rounds, and excellent player development. They maintained competitiveness through much of their build, and built a winning environment that attracted talent and kept their core engaged. Even OKC's more recent rebuild. Collecting a ton of draft picks hasn't put them at the very bottom of the league for extended periods. They've found talent and developed it. These teams prove time and time again that sustainable success isn't about when you pick, but how you manage your assets, develop talent, and foster a consistent culture of winning. So the expectation that tanking is the only way, that's busted. The reality is that true lasting success in the NBA comes from building smart, developing your talent, and always striving to win, even when it's tough. It's about putting together all the right pieces, not just waiting for one mythical savior. It shows that winning teams are grown, not just found at the bottom of the lottery. If you enjoyed this video, do me a favor. Hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this every week.